Fake news. Now, it's always existed. You know, the emperor is dead, the sky is falling, whatever. But here lately, it's gotten to where it's a coined phrase that everyone recognizes, and only and even beyond that, it's a tactic. People using it in politics and in commerce and in all kinds of different trades. You know, the stars use it to get attention, but fake news is even gotten to the point where you can create it yourself, and there's websites designed just for it. Now, when I first became a Christian, one of the things that really struck me as something I wanted to try to be a part of was when Jesus said, "You should know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." Well, that sounded good. I didn't realize the truth was so blasted hard to find in the world. And the main reason is because, like the seed that got thrown in amongst the weeds, there's so much fake news blocking out the sun, so much to get through. And I want to look at some of that this morning. Some of it's done just out of humor. And, there's websites you can go to, as I mentioned, where there's a blank marquee and you can write in whatever you want on the restaurant or church marquee or whatever. Or the one where the president's holding the bill he just signed, and you can fill in whatever you want. Most of you have probably seen those, but those exist if you didn't know it. Here's one that I even shared myself on a Southern Baptist pastor's page, and it's you go to this page and you can put whatever you want on there, and it comes with advertisements and share buttons. It looks just like a real news page. This one says Southern Baptist pastor resigns in disgrace after he confesses he does not actually like casseroles. you know, and that's a little fake news for fun, but more often than not, it's done for more damaging purposes. There's another place to show you how bad it is, what a thing it's become. There's a page called hustlers.com, and on their little logo up in the corner of their web page, their motto says hustlers.com because you love being lied to. I mean, it's a little astonishing that there's enough of it out there that somebody's actually, and this is just one website that someone's created because you do love being lied to. And we're going to look at, first off, here in a second, why people love being lied to. But before I do, I want to point out that it can be fun, but more often than not, is to discredit someone. There's a purpose behind the fake news. There's an agenda. And you wonder why people would accept fake news and why it can be, how it can be agenda driven and all. Well, that brings me to a little thing called paradigm. Okay? And paradigm is just a fancy word for a point of view. Okay? It's a scientific word for a point of view. Matter of fact, paradigm is so is important that most scientific articles that are submitted, by scientists actually has a paragraph describing the paradigm from which he had conducted this particular experiment or whatever he is writing about. Now here's paradigm works. Here's a guy. I know he's not a pretty guy, but he's out there, and from his point of view, he sees a 6. Well, you know where I'm headed with this. There's another guy over here. All right. He sees a 9. And then there's someone over here. He sees something, but he has no idea what it is. Oh, and then there'll be somebody looking over here, and he'll think he sees something. He's sure he sees something, but he's positive it's nothing. You know, and they all have these different paradigms. Now, some people have their paradigms because they've never been anywhere else. They've never heard anything else. They've never experienced anything else. I'm not one of those. Believe me, I've tried them all. And the way the fake news gets impacted is that man fears the unknown. They want to believe they know, and nobody wants to be wrong. So, we all start to get our little cliques going. All of our people, we get together and they do it over here, and they do it over here, and they get together and go, I'm right, you're right, yeah, we're right, and they cheer each other on for whatever their paradigm is. Now here's the sadder thing that some people have never seen other paradigms. There are people that have seen all the paradigms and they choose one because it benefits their lifestyle, their greed or their lust or their whatever it is, their purpose, their political purposes. And then some of these people get in there and they start to create fake news to manipulate people with the right point of view. You know, propaganda. Propaganda is nothing new. It's been around thousands of centuries. Sun Tzu wrote a little bit about propaganda, you know? And so, because people want to be birds of a feather and flock together and feel like they know something and cling to things, they develop these paradigms. And then, because of the paradigms, they're much more willing to accept fake news. Now, why am I talking about it? Because it can be so damaging, and I'm seeing some of it today, a lot of it today. I mean, I can hardly stand to go on Facebook because I can't enjoy a lot of it because of the agenda of others, and most of it that makes it unenjoyable is some of the fake news they put on there. You know, to one extreme, one side or the other of every subject. But fake news can last so long. It can last decades, many decades. I've got a story and an example here, but when I first became a Christian in the late 60s, I heard it quite often that Jericho did not exist. Archaeologists have scoured that area, and Jericho just absolutely does not exist. Well, from the 20s to about the 50s, that had been true. I'm still hearing it in the 60s. Imagine my surprise when in the mid-70s I get my first good study Bible, and in the section in the back, the study section, there's an archaeological section with pictures of Jericho and a whole article about its discovery and how it's laid out just like, you know, it was described in the Bible. Then I noticed the discovery date was in the early 50s. So you're talking about a decade that it hadn't been true when I first heard it. 2 decades by the time I found out it wasn't true and was still hearing it. I've been through several other things the same way, like David. But fake news can last for decades and continue to do damage. And here's one that I took off of the internet that that a friend of mine shared, and it is a quote by Carl Sagan. I'll read it at first. It says, "We are the product of 4.5 billion years of fortuitous, slow biological evolution. There is no reason to think that the evolutionary process has stopped. Man is a transitional animal. He is not the climax of creation." Carl Sagan. Anyways, the thing about this meme by Carl Sagan is that he died close to 30 years ago, and this quote was made long before he died. So you're looking at a a piece of information or news that's 3 to 4 decades old and still being passed around as true. And where he says here there's no reason not to believe, well, today there is, Mr. Sagan. It's called genetics and DNA. And credible scientists are abandoning evolution in droves now, because there is now, in fact, proof that we have not been any evolution from any animal to another animal. Now, man has progressed. There has been an evolution within species, where we have changed. Species have changed within species. But this whole evolution concept of Darwin's is really old fake news now. And yet, people, because they want to support their paradigm for their lifestyle or whatever their purpose is, continue to share old news. It's fake. Now, some fake news just sounds real knowledgeable and sounds like it's a fact. It's said in a factual statement when it's really just a soundbite with no factual evidence whatsoever. The one I'm talking about, I can't show you because it had some obscenities in it. But it basically said there's no blank proof that God exists or that Jesus ever existed, and yet people still believe this blanky blank blank, right? Well, that sounded like a real good, truthful statement. Somebody really knew what they were talking about, except for, we'll start with Jesus. My testimony on that's a lot like a man named Lee Strobel. Lee Strobel was a devout atheist. He was an Ivy educated investigative journalist, an award-winning journalist, and his wife got saved, and he got mad, especially since his first time she'd ever told him he was wrong about something, I guess. But Lee Strobel took all of his investigative powers and spent 2 years and traveled the world and talked to experts, both atheists and believers and rabbis and Christians and all kinds of people. And in the end, instead of proving the story of Jesus was false and his wife was a big goofball, he became one of the most popular Christian writers of the 80s and 90s, and I believe he's still alive and writing today. I don't know, but anyway, he was unable to disprove it. There is plenty of proof outside the Bible that Jesus existed, that the crucifixion happened, and there's 2,000 years of people trying to disprove the story, and no one's been able to yet, not even after torturing hundreds and thousands of witnesses. As for God, there's plenty of proof God exists. I'm sitting in the middle of a bunch of it right now in the San Juan National Forest. Yes, I am. And I wish we had to pull up in the trees and get out of the wind, but the mountain's right behind us. We can see it when we step one side or the other. We know God exists. There's proof God exists because we see evidence of his presence. We see evidence of his presence in the world around us and in our own lives when we look for it and look to him and challenge it and test him. That proof is there. That evidence is there. And you may say, well, to believe in something intangible that you can't touch or test or prove or hold or whatever, that's crazy. That's just happy dreaming. Okay, well, somebody needs to tell that to the scientists, because that's basically how you describe dark matter. Okay, really. Well, we don't know what it is or how it is or anything about it. We believe it's there, though, because we see its effect. So if it works for them, why can't it work for me? I have tested God 50 years now since I was saved. I'm 58, and over 50 years now since I was saved. And I've tried to be an atheist because it would have been great. Do whatever you want if there was no God, and you don't have to feel guilty about nothing if there's no God and no right or wrong. And, believe me, I've tried. And I've tried even when I believed that, and there have been times when I was mad at him, or angry with him, or just didn't understand him and gave up on him, or gave up on myself. But here's some news that isn't fake, something that's true. And I had to hang myself and meet him myself to find out. That's a whole other sermon. But I can tell you firsthand, from testing him, from proving, from pushing to the limit where I met him face to face in death, that there is a God. And you can prove to yourself he's there if you want to look for his effects and test him. And Jesus Christ, absolutely true. And I have to believe that, because you're talking about a fake news story that's been beat up, literally, physically, people have been beat up over this story for thousands of years. And in the end, there's still more proof that it is true than that it isn't. And in my personal life, my personal testimony of the ins and the outs and the backs and forths, I've never found anything untrue about what the Bible says about the nature of God, the nature of myself, or Jesus Christ's Son, or the nature of that covenant. And there's some really good news that you can take to the bank. God is real. Jesus loves you. He forgives you. He died and rose from the grave to prove he had the authority to forgive you. And now you can have a relationship with him personally and pray and interact with God directly through Jesus Christ. It's true. Anyways, Godspeed. Bless you all. Thank you for listening. Peace out.